Problème d'approvisionnement d'eau. Qu'en est-il de milieu rural? Qu'est-ce qu'ils boivent? Dans le milieu rural, ils lavent les mains, le linge, ils lavent les vaisselles, ils font leur douche, ils boivent cette eau-là à la fin. Il y a des efforts à faire. Il y a des efforts à faire. Ne jouons pas, j'ai commencé par la statistique, mais ne jouons pas sur la statistique. Regardons les réalités en face. Il n'y aurait pas de développement s'il n'y a pas des gens en bonne santé. Deuxième point que je voudrais relever, l'énergie. On parle de la transformation des économies que nous allons manger. Thank you. It's enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think 3 or 4 important points worth emphasizing before turning it over to you for your questions. One, I think we need to look much more at the intersections between the goals. I think that's been underscored by some of the panelists. If we had a much more focus on sustainable urbanization, for example, and planned urbanization, some of the problems around sanitation would be better addressed. Also the question of energy. A number of reports have come out which make the policy discussion a lot richer around green industrialization, around looking at the relationship also between industrialization and urbanization and how things can be done differently. If you look at the numbers, for example, Africa doesn't do badly when it comes to material consumption, but that's because of poverty and the fact that it's relatively low in terms of urbanization. But Africa is urbanizing faster now, is amongst the fastest urbanizing continents. And so the question is, those numbers won't remain low if we don't do something now. But Africa also has the opportunity of doing things differently because we don't have legacy systems. It's easier to start by doing something innovative here than it might be in a developed country context where there are already vested interests, already systems in place which support existing ways of doing things. So I think we need to look from a policy perspective at some of the intersections between these. What do we need to prioritize to get impact across the different goals? And also, I think it's been emphasized that this report, because of data issues, doesn't go far enough in going down to the last mile. We don't see here, as we would in a national report, the difference between urban and rural areas, between different socioeconomic groups, but that hopefully will improve as we pay more attention to data and as we get more disaggregated data. Now, over to you. We have 1 hour for the launch of both of these reports, so we'll just take a few questions. Any questions? Yes, over there, the last person.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for the report and for the discussions around the report. My comment is actually going to be based on the presentation that I listened to, given the fact that we haven't seen the report itself or I haven't read it. And my comment is a bit of a concern that even though, yes, we have a strong attempt and there's a room, and depending on the goal that you're actually reporting on, to work with additional institutions on the continent. Thank you.
Can we take a few more questions so that the panel can answer them together? Glenda?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizations presenting the report. I think the different countries. So I do this line. So we are trying to identify in the different SDGs which data is available. And why is this useful? Because it will help us to see in the new instruments what variables do we need. So true, we have to go to the field, but indeed statistics help us to know where and how to focus policies, budgeting, and other crucial areas in the countries. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. I just want to limit my intervention to the presentation, especially how the data sets were presented. In some of the slides, it's presented Africa minus North Africa. And other areas is all Africa together, compared with the rest of the world. And it appears to be a bit misleading from those data sets where it's less North Africa and others is plus North Africa. What is the underlying thinking for presenting such a data set this way? Especially when you present Africa less North Africa and you compare with other continents. Thank you.
And I think this is a very serious issue for us here. And our member states have taken a decision that Africa is one continent. And Africa is coming together. As you know, countries like Morocco are coming and trying to join ECOWAS. They are not moving north, they are moving south. But because of data, still we have no data of our own to use. And still our narrative is somehow controlled outside Africa. And when we face that issue, we say Africa excluding North Africa, because we have taken a decision, a deliberate decision not to use the term sub-Saharan Africa. And I think it is incumbent upon all of us to work very hard to have our own data so that we will have our own narrative and the rest of the world will no longer enforce this false division between Africa and North Africa on us. On the first question on gender, I think I must admit the presentation did not do justice to some of this disaggregation we have. Indeed, women are the most affected when it comes to use of biomass and when it comes to fetching for drinking water and so on. So,
well, thank you very much. Let me just complement what Adam mentioned. In spite of the fact that there was a kind of African Union declaration on not using, that the use of sub-Saharan Africa is very divisive. And unfortunately, like we said earlier in the morning, that he who controls the statistics, he who generates statistics controls the narratives. Up till now, data are being generated at sub-regional level, where the 5 North African countries are considered with Middle East. They call it MENA, Middle East and North Africa. They are not aggregated together. The sub-Saharan Africa are done separately. So in some situations where you have to do the real something, but you will not be able to do the weighted average. You want to put all of them together. That's why just for us to use the data as generated by some of these clearing agencies that have been done. So they are yet to really make sure what the data that are generated on a regional basis align with the declaration that the African Union and its member states have made. And on the issue of bringing national institutions, I just want to let you know that for each of the reports, there are about 2 validation processes. Once the report is ready before it is published, the first level is to bring all, we call it the EGM, expert group meeting on the SDGs. We bring it for all representing at least one focal person from the institution responsible for data generation as well as SDG reporting at the national level. And that's what we usually do. Once that one is ratified, they put their comments there, then we put it there, and then the summary of it is presented in the meeting of Ministers of Economy and Finance, CAMEF. So, and once it's done, that's when it goes to the technical and copy editing, then printing. So that's it. The member states are fully on board in terms of that. In fact, it's not it won't be printed unless it's endorsed by those clearing mechanisms. I think the other thing I have, which I again intend to, Adam has mentioned a few other things. The only question, which I know, relates to the involvement of other agencies. I just want to let you know that there was what they call the African Union Declaration in 2015, when the Common African, what we call Common African Position on the SDG was adopted by heads of state and government, mentioning four institutions, African Union, ECA, African Development Bank, UNDP, and UNFPA as the agencies mandated to monitor Agenda 2063 and Agenda 2030 in Africa. But what we usually do is that we always include all other agencies that are interested in SDGs when it comes to those validation processes. We invite all of them to expert group meetings. I think the last one was held in Mozambique, in Maputo. We always invite all to come and contribute to the process before it is finally printed. But again, finally, I just want to let you, just to really re-echo what Professor Harrison mentioned. UNDP did what they call the alignment report last year. The alignment report shows that Agenda 2063 and the SDGs are 90% aligned in terms of coherence. It shows that whichever you implement, you are indirectly going to achieve a kind of 90% across the two. And again, we did the same alignment report shows the kind of congruence among the high five of African Development Bank, the Agenda 2030, as well as Agenda 2063, and they are 86% congruence, which shows that we are not talking at cross purposes. Once we are able to implement any of this effectively, it's indirectly helping to implement the other agenda. I thought that's true. Those are the kind of reflections I intend to add to what Adam says. Over to you.
Professor Harrison.
Merci. Je réitère, l'Afrique unie, solidaire et parlant d'une seule voix. La statistique est un outil au cœur du développement. Et ça, la production des entités ici présentes de ce rapport est pour moi salutaire. Et nous allons continuer à améliorer le rapport. En ce qui concerne la statistique, au mois de janvier dernier, les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, il y a une semaine, M. Adams et moi, nous étions à Khartoum pour la réunion annuelle des directeurs généraux des instituts nationaux de statistique. On va y travailler là-dessus. Et c'est là. Pourquoi? Parce que les statistiques utilisées en Afrique, finalement, ne sont pas des statistiques produites par les Africains eux-mêmes. Ce sont les organismes internationaux qui nous mettent à notre disposition la statistique. Et donc, on va mettre en place, on va implanter et implémenter cette stratégie. Ça, c'est l'œuvre de mon département. Et pareillement, le 2 novembre dernier, on a fait la remise des clés à Tunis de l'Institut panafricain de la statistique. Et là, je fais appel. J'ai à côté de moi la BAD, à côté de moi de l'UNECA. On était ensemble dans l'élaboration de toutes ces stratégies-là. Restons ensemble pour mieux améliorer les choses. Merci.
Thank you very much. Since time is not with us, I think we're going to move very quickly to launch the report. But just to respond to the point raised by the colleague there, as more and more countries present here come up with their SDG baseline reports, the analysis at the regional level can become much richer. So I'm sure that over the next few years, we will not be facing some of the same questions that the panel had to respond to today. So it's with great pleasure that I ask the representatives from the 4 partner organizations to officially get up and launch the report. Thank you. For the next report, can I request the panelists to please come up for the Africa Governance Report, and I request Professor Olu Ajay Kai to please come up and moderate the session. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Okay, very good. It's working now. All right. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And I know that we are running down our gas tank. So I promise that we will be very swift on this, report that we want to launch. But it is an important report because it addresses a major issue on the continent, namely, how do we govern our natural resources so as to be able to mobilize domestic resources for use in transforming our economies. And the report that has just been launched also has as a center economic transformation. So this is very much in line with that process. And without further ado, let me invite Dr. Adam Elhaika to kindly make the presentation of the book, and then we ask Professor Alan Hash to give us his reflection, and then we throw it open briefly, and then we wrap it up. So, Adam, over to you.
Good evening again. Thank you, Professor Ajikaya. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it is going to be the last meeting today, and I know you are tired. I'm going to be very brief, and we have copies of the report for you to pick up. This African Governance Report is a flagship report of ECA. Each produced every 2 years, and we select a theme of critical importance to Africa's long-term development.